Okay, now it's time to talk about content, the heart and soul of your blog. This is truly what it's all about. If you want your blog to succeed, it is imperative that your content is up to par. In this section, we'll talk about exactly how to achieve that. First, we'll cover 8 of the best places to find inspiration and ideas for future posts. And then I have 20 specific content ideas that you can steal and apply to your own blog. We'll also discuss content frequency and ask the question, how often should you post? Ready? Let's dive in. In this lecture, I'd like to go through the essentials of how to craft a great blog post. There's no magic formula here. You have to experiment and see what works for you, but there are a few things I want you to consider when you're creating new content. The first thing is your audience. Think about who you're trying to reach with your content and what they're looking for. What kinds of things do they want to know about? What types of content resonate with them? We'll talk about getting to know your target audience in a little more detail in the next lecture. Next is your topic. This is pretty straightforward. Decide what the post is going to cover and what its purpose is, and make sure everything else is centered around that. Every post should serve one particular purpose. If you try to do too many things with a single post, you may end up diluting the value for your readers. So focus on one thing at a time. Your title is important because it's the first thing people see, and it entices the reader to click when they see your post on search engines or social media. It should be something relatively short, ideally less than 55 characters if you want it all to show up on Google, but it should also be catchy and unique. Spend some time on your post titles because they can make or break your first impressions. Next, we have the opening line, the very first sentence or paragraph of your post. This is where you have to continue to build interest. You've already captured people with the title, but at this point they're trying to see if your post is actually worth the time it takes to read it. So grab their attention with an engaging first line and then follow through with great content. In the 21st century, attention spans are shorter than ever. And a fact of life for bloggers is that many visitors don't read our content so much as they scan it. So it's a good idea to cater to that demographic by formatting your posts and making them easy to skim while still providing plenty of substance. What that means is your post shouldn't just be a big wall of text. You can use subheadings, images, videos, bullet point lists, things like that to break up your prose and make it a little more digestible. You can also highlight important points with bold or italicized text, but try to use those sparingly. How long is the ideal blog post? I've seen arguments and data on both sides of this debate, so my answer to the question is this: as long as it needs to be. I've written posts under 500 words that went on to generate tens of thousands of page views just because they provided value and gave people exactly what they were looking for. On the other hand, I've also had success with longer content, say 2,000 to 4,000 words, because it dives deep and offers more information than my competitors. There is some evidence that Google favors longer content when it comes to search rankings, but it has to be good content. Don't add fluff to increase your word count like you would on a college paper or something. Just think about how you can pack as much value into your posts as possible. You'll notice the recurring theme here is it's not about word count. It's about the amount of value you can provide. And finally, it's a good idea to have a call to action at the end of your posts, which is where you direct the reader to take the next step. What this looks like depends on your particular goals. It could be asking them to leave a comment or join your email list or check out a product, something like that. Whatever the case, if they've made it to the end of your post, they're already engaged with your content. So you should take that opportunity to keep them engaged. So that's it. You're now well on your way to writing some epic blog posts. Next, we'll talk about how to get to know your target audience and come up with content ideas that they will love. A lot of people wonder how prolific bloggers always have fresh content ideas. But my question is, how don't you have fresh content ideas? There are so many possibilities, and even if you run out of ideas in your own head, there's plenty of inspiration out there on the web if you know where to look. For example, BuzzSumo is a really interesting tool that allows you to explore the top performing content for any topic or competitor. So you enter a topic or domain into the search bar, and it shows you the most popular content within a specified time period based on social media shares. This can teach you a lot about the types of content your target audience loves, which can serve as a guide for your own strategy. You can also use it to find where your competitors may be lacking. So you can look through all the top content on a particular subject and identify areas where you can create something better. Quora is one of my favorite sites on the web. It's a Q&A service where people ask and answer questions on thousands of different topics, and the questions get answered by real people with real experience. So what does this have to do with finding content ideas? Well, you can sign up for Quora and follow topics related to your blog, and then you'll have all kinds of questions asked by real people in your target audience that you can then incorporate into your content strategy. If there's a relevant question that a lot of people are following on Quora, it means there's demand for an answer, and you can write a great blog post based on that. Reddit can be a goldmine for content ideas straight from the people you're trying to reach. If you're not familiar with how Reddit works, it's a message board website divided into various boards called subreddits, which are each focused on a particular topic. You can find a subreddit for just about anything. As a general rule, I'd say if there are at least 4 people interested in a topic, there's probably a subreddit for it. So you find a couple of relevant subreddits and look at what's being posted there. Pay attention to the types of links that get a lot of upvotes, but also dig into the text posts and comments to see what kinds of conversations are happening. Chances are you'll find more than a few potential content ideas. Next, we have forums. Much like Reddit, forums are a place where your target market hangs out, so you can dig through the archives and find a lot of great content ideas. To find forums focused on your topic, you can head over to Google and search for something like your topic forums, or use a website like thebiggestboards.com, which lists popular forums by category. Facebook and LinkedIn groups are very similar to forums, but they're a lot more popular and accessible in the age of social media. Public groups are searchable, so find yourself some relevant groups and pay attention to the recurring questions and conversation topics, and you'll come away with some solid inspiration. Industry publications. Look at what's being written on large blogs and publications in your industry, and use the headlines as inspiration, but also follow what's happening in the comment sections of those articles, because again, that's where you get a taste of what people are actually thinking and what questions are being asked. Speaking of comments, make sure you're always reading your comments and noting any repeat questions or other trends that you could use for future content. You can also just ask people what they want from you. Nobody knows your readers better than, well, your readers. Finally, looking back at your past content is a fantastic way to brainstorm and plan new content. Always be monitoring what's working and what's not so you can build on your best content and focus your execution on things that actually drive results. So if list posts perform really well for you, do more of those. If a particular tutorial has gotten really popular, consider supplementing it with related tutorials on similar topics. This is really just the tip of the iceberg. There are a ton of ways to find out what your target audience is looking for, but this list is a good start. Like I said earlier, content strategy is all about the question, how and to whom will you provide value? As I'm sure you know, there are many different types of content you can create to serve your audience. In this lecture, I want to go through 20 specific content ideas that you can steal and apply to your own content strategy. If you've been on the internet at all over the last few years, you know that list posts or listicles are massively popular. They're easy to skim and digest in a world of 140 character attention spans, but the best list posts go deep. They're not just bullet point lists. Each list item is a headline with a more detailed explanation under each one, often with images and other rich media embedded. When you approach it like this, you're serving the people who skim and the people who want more substance. It's a win-win. How-to guides and tutorials are a cornerstone of successful blog content and one of the most straightforward ways to provide value, by teaching people how to do something. They can be long or short, but a great way to top your competition is to dive deeper and explain each step in more detail than what they do. Well-executed how-to content can be a significant driver of traffic, particularly from search engines where people are actively searching for solutions. Explainers are another type of informative content, but instead of teaching people how to do something, they explain a particular concept in detail. So for example, you could explain the history of a topic, how something works, or why things are the way they are. Explainers can perform really well as a response to news or current events. So if there's a news story in your space where some of the background or concepts are unclear to the general public, you can add to the conversation with an explainer post. Checklists are sort of a subcategory of list posts, but they're a powerful form of content in their own right. With a checklist, the goal is to create a list of items or products or actions that are necessary for a particular task or goal. So you compile everything that people need into a list, and you've got a nice, actionable, shareable piece of content. Q&A. Questions and answers are always a good starting point for content. There are a couple of ways to handle Q&A. You can write a long post answering a bunch of related questions in one place, or you can write a series of posts answering a single question in detail with each one. In most cases, I would recommend the series approach, if only for the SEO benefit of attracting readers searching for the answer to a specific question. An interview is a great format for just about any topic. Get in touch with an important figure in your area of interest and interview them. Ask open-ended questions and get their insights on things your readers care about. Interviews work well in text, video, or audio formats. Profiles are another way to share the stories of people in your industry. When you profile someone, you'll want to write about who they are, what they do, what experiences they've had, and how they got to where they are today. A good profile usually begins with an interview, but you'll want to scour the web for any additional information that may be relevant. After interviewing and profiling hundreds of entrepreneurs, this is one of my favorite content formats. Expert roundups. This one is kind of a combination of a list post and an interview. Basically, what you can do is email a bunch of experts and ask them to answer one single question for you. Then compile all of their answers into a post. Because it's a single question, even busy people who wouldn't have time for a full interview may have time to answer it for you. And at the end, you'll have a wide range of insights on a single issue, making for a unique, informative resource that's highly shareable. People to follow. This one is basically the who's who of your industry, a list of people you feel are worth following and why. Entrepreneur.com, for example, put out a list of 50 online marketing influencers to watch, linking to their respective websites and Twitter accounts. Reviews. Reviews are pretty self-explanatory. You take a look at a product or service that's relevant to your audience and provide an honest overview of your thoughts and experience with it, breaking down the good and the bad. Comparisons are similar to reviews, but instead of just covering a single product, you put two similar products side by side, usually competing products, and discuss the differences to help your readers make the right buying decision. News content is interesting because it usually won't drive long-term traffic, but it can drive a substantial amount of short-term traffic. When it comes to news, there are two distinct approaches that are really effective. Either be the first or be the best. If you're the first person to cover a story, you'll naturally get a lot of shares and traffic and links as the original source. But if you're not first, you can spend some extra time to offer additional context and analysis that the original source may have neglected. Link roundups. I used to do a weekly roundup for the tech industry where every Friday I compiled the most important news and the best thought and opinion pieces of the week. You can do something like that or compile the best tools and resources on a given topic. Either way, it saves your readers from having to do the research themselves, and it's easy to write because you're curating other people's content rather than creating your own. Thought and opinion pieces are a great way to go deeper with your content and encourage reader engagement. Consider an issue that's important to your industry and your readers, and take a side. While we're on the topic, I should mention that controversy is very good for traffic and engagement. I don't think you should actively seek out controversy, but anytime I've taken a stance on a controversial issue, it has generated a lot of buzz. Again, though, I want to be clear. If you're going to do controversy, it has to be genuine. Don't go over the top or inflate your opinions for traffic. Authenticity is good. Stories. Humans are natural storytellers, so stories map pretty well to digital content. Stories can entertain your readers and deliver your message in a really unique way. So for example, you could tell a story about someone who wanted to do something, but failed because they didn't do X, Y, and Z. You can also work personal stories from your own life into your blog posts. It makes you more relatable and more human to the people on the other side of the screen. Facts and statistics. Some of my most popular posts have been data-oriented articles with facts and figures surrounding a particular topic. Search engines love this stuff, so if you can compile some relevant statistics from various sources, you should be able to drive a good amount of traffic. Be sure to cite all of your sources so people know where you're getting your information. Original research. If you want to take facts and statistics a step further, you can publish original research on your blog. By conducting your own studies and surveys and sharing the results, you can become a credible and respected source for research in your industry. Once you've grown a large audience or customer base, these people will be your ideal research participants. Whenever you publish research, be sure to include contextual details like your sample size and methodology. Infographics. Infographics can complement your statistics and original research by helping readers visualize your data in a really beautiful way. If you have design skills, you can create them yourself. Otherwise, you can hire someone using a freelance platform like Upwork. And finally, we have case studies, which are a huge asset if you're running a service business. A case study tells the story of how you've helped a particular customer solve their problems, often with quotes or testimonials from the customer themselves. Social proof is a powerful factor in buying decisions, and you can use it to your advantage with a few case studies. So there you have it, 20 content formats that you can work into your content strategy. I can't wait to see what you do with them. It's an age-old question in the blogging world. How often should you post? Now, to be perfectly honest, there is no clear-cut answer. It really comes down to your particular style and the style of content you produce. If you tend to write super long posts, it's probably going to be difficult to publish on a daily or maybe even weekly basis. But if most of your content consists of short news articles and things like that, it'll be in your best interest to post more frequently. My preference is actually a mix of both. You can write long articles and then supplement them with shorter, more digestible content. So one strategy is to batch produce a few pieces of shorter content and then schedule them to go out one by one in the future. Then you have a few days or weeks to prepare your longer posts while the shorter ones trickle out. I recommend installing the Editorial Calendar plugin to help you visualize scheduled content. If you ever feel the need to choose between quality and quantity, quality is the right choice every single time. Usually when you think of blog content, you think of a standard text blog post. Now it might have some images and videos and stuff like that embedded, but when it comes to the core content, what most people think of is text. But I'd like to challenge that assumption a little bit because we as bloggers are by no means limited to the written word. There are so many different content formats you can deploy to get your message across, and it's worth exploring some of the different options to see which formats best suit your personal skill set as well as the preferences of your audience. So video is a great example. We're actually living in the golden age of online video. So many companies are turning to video as their primary medium for storytelling, and for a lot of consumers, it's the ideal way to consume media. So if you're good on camera, or if you find video to be compelling, you could experiment with putting out video content instead of just text. There are a couple of ways to do that. You could just upload videos directly to your site, but what most people tend to prefer is uploading videos to YouTube and then just embedding the videos in WordPress. That way the video is hosted by YouTube, so you don't have to worry about the extra strain on your server. And you also get the added benefit of being discoverable on the actual YouTube platform, which is a great way to start growing an audience. Podcasting is another medium that's been exploding lately. I actually hosted a roundtable podcast for a few years, and that was enormous fun to do. So if you think audio may play well with your audience, give it a try. It's pretty easy to set up a podcast in WordPress. Personally, I always use the PowerPress plugin. You just create a regular blog post, attach your audio file with PowerPress, and you're good to go. Here's a little bonus tip if you're on a budget and want to start podcasting while keeping your expenses to a minimum. Pick up the Audio-Technica ATR 2100. This is a high-quality, affordable microphone that works over both USB and XLR, and then use the free program Audacity for your recording and editing. So again, there's video, there's audio. If you have design skills, you could do infographics or something like that. The point here is that you're not limited to the traditional text blog post. Feel free to take the content ideas we covered earlier in this section and adapt them to a format that works for you. In this lecture, I'm going to share with you a strategy used by some of the world's most prolific content creators to generate what seems like an infinite stream of fresh content. So as we saw, when you're creating content for your blog, you have a number of different formats to choose from. You can do regular written posts, you can do audio, you can do video, you can do other visual formats. You have plenty of options at your disposal, and it can actually be in your interest to do more than one. You see, when you create a piece of content in one format, there's a huge opportunity there to repurpose that content and share it again in a different format. You can use that as a way to promote the original content or to deliver the same message to a completely different audience. Let me give you an example. Let's say you interview a high-profile thought leader in your industry, and let's say it's a video interview. That kind of interview by itself is an amazing opportunity to generate traffic and links and social shares and build authority and credibility around your brand. But if you just post the video and call it a day, you're not really squeezing all the juice out of the orange, so to speak. There's still a lot of untapped potential in that one piece of content. So here's what I would do in that situation. First of all, when I initially post the interview, I'd create a blog post with a video embedded at the top. I'd write up a quick summary, and below that, I would transcribe the entire interview to text, every word. That way, if somebody comes along and wants to read the interview rather than watch it, they can do that. And having that transcript there also helps with search traffic because search engines are much better at understanding text than video. So that's the initial post. I've already done a lot more than most people would, but I'm not finished. An interview with an influencer can be a great source of social media content. So I'd pull out a few of the most impactful quotes and tweet them out over the next few days, making sure to tag the person and link back to the interview. Then I'd use the same quotes to create some beautiful graphics using a tool like Canva or Pablo by Buffer. Then I'd post those on Instagram and Facebook, again making sure to tag the person and point people to the original video. I might even make a short highlight reel of some of the best one-liners of the interview and share that on Instagram as well. Then, if I have a podcast, I'd convert the video to audio and release it as a podcast episode. And I'd probably just record an intro and an outro so my listeners understand the context of what they're hearing. But guess what? We're still not done. We can actually go a little bit further and craft another blog post with a headline like the 3 most valuable lessons I learned from whatever the person's name is. Here we're appealing to a slightly different audience, people who may not have time to watch or read an entire long-form interview, but are still interested in getting a condensed version of the main points. Then you can even repurpose that post a little bit, turn it into a podcast episode where you elaborate on what you learned and why it matters, and maybe tweet out bits and pieces of what you learned, make more graphics, and so on. Think about what I just did. I took one video interview and managed to turn it into a dozen or more individual pieces of content. Most people are not willing to do that, which makes it an incredible opportunity to set yourself apart. And it's actually not that hard to do since you're just repurposing existing content rather than creating something entirely new. See if you can work this little trick into your content strategy. It's simple, but very, very powerful.